Hello, everybody. You're watching the Mike Nelson Show. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, make sure to subscribe. I want to thank everybody who's already hit that subscribe button. Today, I'm here with a pretty cool guest. I'm here with Will Patrick. How you doing today, Will?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me on, Mike. I really appreciate it.
All right, Will. Yeah, no problem. Thanks for coming on. If you can kind of tell our listeners where you're based at, and talk to me a little bit about how you kind of got into the music business.
hmm Well, I'm based in New York City, and I have strong ties to Orlando, Florida. That's where I'm from. And the way I got started really was I kind of just started gigging around locally in Orlando and in clubs and bars, and it kind of just took over from there. And venues started getting a little bigger and started playing with more artists, but really just kind of started to put myself out there a little bit.
Now, why did you pick up the guitar?
I heard Jimi Hendrix when I was about 4 years old. Me and my dad, we had both gone to a record store and picked up this album called Band of Gypsies, which was one of the last albums that came out before Hendrix actually passed away. And I just remember as soon as he put it on through the speakers, it was like everything just changed from that point.
So you've been playing guitar since you were a little kid, then your whole life, basically.
Yep, yeah. No, my dad had a little acoustic guitar, and he showed me all the open chords, and then from there I kind of became obsessed. And then when I was about 12 or 13 is when I started to practice a lot. Yeah.
And you mentioned Jimi Hendrix. What other guitar players were kind of an influence for you?
Jimmy Page for sure. There was a lot of classic rock first, but Jimmy Page was a big one. Dwayne Allman, Johnny Winter, Peter Frampton, Steve Howe. Um, so many guitar players, and then it kind of went into like John McLaughlin and people like that. They were big early on.
Yeah, I love, of course, Half Eastern Orchestra, a great band for sure. And talk to me a little bit about the '70s. Like you mentioned a lot of people that played in the '70s. Like how that kind of influenced your playing now.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I was also a really, really big Beatles fan, and my parents just had all these albums, and so that was kind of the foundation of of my musical sort of upbringing was a lot of Beatles, a lot of Pink Floyd, and this was the music that they listened to when they were growing up, and this music still sounds so good today when you put it on. You put on Dark Side of the Moon, and I don't know, it just kind of takes you to another place. And it wasn't just the '70s either. Like we were really big into grunge, so I'm a big Soundgarden fan, and we liked heavy music too. We listened to Black Sabbath, and I'm a big Tony Iommi fan too, and Ozzy Osbourne and all that stuff. And then at the same time, we listened to a lot of jazz. We listened to a lot of Miles Davis. We listened to a lot of classical music. So it was just like everything, was fair game. We listened to stuff on the radio to, whatever was current at the time. And, so it's all sorts of stuff.
So you kind of used to play along with records or songs then when you were playing
Yes.
guitar.
Yes, exactly. I vividly remember working out a lot of live albums from Jimi Hendrix. So I'd put on the Band of Gypsies record. I'd put on the Isle of Wight record, and I'd also put on the Led Zeppelin Live at Madison Square Garden record. And I would some people would think it's a little obsessive, but I would learn everything note for note, every phrase, the way the bends were sort of articulated, and I try to get as close as possible. And then when I go out and I'd play a show or something, I'd be like, okay, I'm gonna try to make something on the spot rather than play. I copied it at home, and then when I went out to play, I tried to just take what I had learned and try to put my own voice into it.
Now, when you mentioned you went out and played, does that mean you were doing covers then live? at your early shows?
Yeah, yes. Yeah. And I still do. I still play a lot of Jimi Hendrix, unless we're doing like mostly originals, but I'll still play a lot of Hendrix and Zeppelin and because it's so much fun to play. I get such a rush playing that music.
Now, when you were learning guitar, did you learn everything by ear, or did you kind of learn theory, or how was like actually when you like you say you mentioned 12, 13, you started practicing, did you start taking more classes, or how did that happen?
Yeah, I everything was basically by ear, and then there were a couple individuals I met. There was this wonderful there was a guitar program at my high school, and I would take it as an elective. And there was this wonderful teacher, Joseph, and he taught me a lot, theory wise, and then he introduced me to a guitar player named Larry Coryell, who he was a contemporary of John McLaughlin, and he's considered the godfather of jazz fusion. And he had moved to Orlando and got married. Not a little bit before I met him, and it was just such a wonderful connection. And so that was when like my understanding of like theory and kind of became supercharged, where he kind of took me under his wing. He'd bring me to gigs. He brought me to New York. We played a bunch of shows in New York. He introduced me to other musicians, and that was like a very formative. I was like 14, 15 when that happened. So I was still in high school when that happened. I would take off school and we'd go play like the Blue Note in New York or something, and it was great.
Now, so that means I guess your live aspect, like playing the guitar live and your live show has been basically important then from the beginning.
Yeah, I would say so.
And is that was that because you like the like live albums? Is that kind of why? Because you mentioned like Peter Frampton, like I guess Friend Who Comes Alive, and then of course the song remains the same. We had so many good live albums from that era,
Yeah.
and I think it kind of got lost. I think the live show in the '80s and '90s, at least in my opinion, for a lot of
Mm.
our favorite bands. But I think in the '70s that live aspect was always kind of at the forefront when recording. Is that kind of how it's been for you in your career?
Yeah, yeah, I agree. There's an energy to live performances that, of course, sometimes doesn't translate for studio recordings, and I think some people are very kind of obsessed with the polished nature of even their live performances nowadays, where everything is almost like a spectacle. Not that that's a bad thing, but I really I like what you're saying about there was a rawness and a authenticity to those live shows during those periods where it was like music was really, it's like you really had to bring it, because you that's why I love Cream, Eric Clapton and Cream, I think, is another good example, and Traffic and Blind Faith, where it's just a few guys come on stage, and Jimi Hendrix Experience, three guys come on stage, and it was like an orchestra. It was so intense, but it was just a couple guys, and that was it.
So for you, what was your like favorite live album then of that time? Do you have one? It's hard to pick.
It's so hard to pick. It's so hard to pick. Um, uh, you know, there's a really, Band of Gypsies is a strong contender for sure. Just those Fillmore shows. I love the Jimi Hendrix show. He did a performance at Berkeley in California in 1970, and there are some incredible versions of songs like "Hear My Train a Comin'." There's a version from Berkeley in 1970 that's particularly, it's to me it's on par with that Machine Gun um, recording from Band of Gypsies. So yeah, Led Zeppelin from Royal Albert Hall. They never put out an album, but when Led Zeppelin played Royal Albert Hall in 1970, um, you know, the Woodstock performances, those are pretty spectacular too.
Now let's fast forward, of course, to your career. You how did you kind of start recording music, or you've put out some singles? Talk to me a little bit about the story of like going pro as a solo artist.
Yeah, well, this year is definitely the year I've put the most stock and effort into my projects. A little, I growing up, I would write songs and I'd just put them on little cassette tapes, and then and sometimes I'd make CDs and I'd sell them at my shows, but it wasn't until recently that I've really started going back into the studio and really kind of putting as much effort into the studio recordings as I do the live shows. I'm definitely more experienced as a live performer than a studio musician, and now that's kind of started to flip a little bit, where now I'm spending a lot more time in the studio and sort of focusing on that as a craft.
Now, you focusing your time in the studio. Have you been kind of recording a lot of stuff by yourself? Have you been working with the producer? Tell me the story about how you've been doing that.
I've been producing everything myself for the most part, but sometimes I'll take some input from the musicians I'm with or the engineers that are um, sort of setting up the sessions at the recording studios. But um, this album, it's my very first album. It's called Sound of the Sky, and that will be released in April. And it's really funny. About half of it was written and recorded just over the last couple months, and then the other half of it is from songs that were written and recorded maybe 5 years ago.
Wow.
So it's been because during that 5 year period, I was playing with a lot of other musicians as a sideman, and then now I've taken the time to focus on my original material and share it with the world. So,
And what was the decision to kind of go on your own then as a solo project?
um, I felt like I still love being a musician for artists, and I was telling you earlier about that time when I started playing out in clubs. That same time, I ended up getting uh, sort of discovered and by Bob James' manager, Sonny Abelardo, who's a wonderful person. Um, and that kind of introduced me to a really great side of the jazz world. And so that was right after Larry Coryell passed away. So I was doing a lot of jazz with Larry, and then he passed, and then I started touring a lot with Bob, and I gained a lot of experience on the road and seeing how people travel and how people set up the gigs and sort of just trying to take as many notes as possible. But the decision finally came to make the switch because I wanted to play this original music that I had written, and I wanted to play this particular type of music, and this genre is it gives me the most joy and the most sort of excitement more than any other style of music. This music just I could play it forever and never get tired of it. The other stuff I adore it, but it just since it wasn't mine, uh, I wasn't as passionate.
Now with your music now, how would you kind of categorize your music if you want to categorize it?
Hmm. I would say it definitely harkens to that time we were talking about, but it's almost like it was made in the modern world. So it's sort of soulful, intense rock. It has rock influence. It has blues influence, and even jazz because of my background. But it for me, it's kind of hard to put it in a box, because it's so eclectic and it has so many um, influences in it. But it definitely takes a lot of inspiration from Jimi Hendrix and Chris Cornell and Soundgarden and even some softer like acoustic music from the 70s too, because there is going to be some acoustic stuff on there as well.
Now talk to me a little about the band that you have, your live band for this you're going to be playing live, and then on this record. Talk to me a little bit more about if you have any other musicians on this album.
Yes, the band is unbelievable, and you have Eric Kirkland who's playing the drums. He's a gospel drummer based in Florida. You have Davin Roy Llewellyn, who is also a gospel bass player based in Florida. And then you have James Atkins, who we both went on the road a lot with Bob James, the jazz pianist. But he is so eclectic and he plays so many different genres. But we both love rock. That's kind of what separates us, is that we have a jazz background, but we like really intense music. We like, we need that intensity and volume and attitude. So
And this album is going to be released on all platforms. Talk to me a little bit more about the release of this record.
yes, it's actually going to be out on vinyl first,
Okay.
and the vinyl will be available in April. It's already available for pre-order on willpatrickmusic.com. So if you want to get a copy of that and kind of make sure you don't get a chance to have one of the first pressings, you can get it there. And then it will probably be on all streaming services in May. So the vinyl rollout will be first, and then streaming will be in May.
And you're hitting the road in April, right? Isn't that where your shows start?
Yes, we're doing. We haven't officially announced all the tour dates we're doing, but there are two festivals on the books in Florida, and then a album release show at the Dr. Phillips Center in Orlando, and then subsequently we're probably going to start in New York. In starting in May and June, we'll do some East Coast dates, and then probably some California dates, and but it's a little bit of a surprise. So
Now talk to me a little about, of course, you're in New York. Have you kind of been, incorporating yourself in the New York music scene? Like, how has that been as a soloist now?
it's been amazing. Some of the best musicians I've ever met and engineers I've ever met. As you well know, I mean, I feel the same way about Los Angeles, and that's where you are,
Yeah,
right?
well, I grew up in LA. I'm up in the Bay Area now for my radio job, but I still do this show for LA radio. But I grew up in LA, so I went to all those awesome shows, the Whiskey, the Roxy, and all
Mm.
that. But I definitely
Yeah,
know about the LA scene.
yeah, I feel the same way about LA too. I love New York and LA passionately because of their history and their sort of passion and devotion to kind of rock music. I mean, every genre, but they're such a rich history of rock, and being in New York has been a blessing because there is a competition and sort of a an expectation that everyone needs to sort of rise to this level because everyone wants to sort of be the best versions of themselves as they can. And so it creates this sort of energy that is really hard to describe, but it's like palpable when you go there because everyone's just really pushing themselves so hard. So it really comes out when you go into a club. That energy is there because everyone is just they want to represent New York, even if they're not from there. There's this expectation that you really got to bring it, you know, when you're playing.
So you think that's kind of like made you a better player, or it's kind of upped your game then, kind of being in that environment?
Definitely. And even just going to listen to music, not even just playing, but if you just go and you could walk into a club in the West Village and you go in and you sit down, and you're going to be a better musician if you just go and you uh, just active listening and very mindful listening, go and meet people and talk to them and learn about their lives and what they're doing, and even just that will just change your life.
Now, how's it been like as a challenge, like in 2026 as a musician now with like people like you're gonna be releasing your record on vinyl first, then it's coming out on streaming. A lot of people, of course, don't really listen to full albums now. How has it been like releasing your music? I know you've put out singles, but how has it been kind of incorporating yourself in today's music world? It's obviously, as we know, much different than it was 50 years ago.
Right. Well, I think it's actually a lot better for artists. Some people might disagree with me, and I think there are ways that it's better and worse for artists. I think it's obviously probably more saturated, but I think it's easier to be more independent and not to have to rely on record labels and sort of, not that those are necessarily a bad thing. I think it just depends on the vision that an artist has for their music and their career. Um, I like the fact that it's so easy to put yourself out, and I'm learning every day like what needs to be done, but I'm just excited to share more of myself and more of my music with the people that with my audience, the people that I've just sort of, that music has brought us together. I think that's one of my favorite things about what I do, is that you just meet people from all over the world, like this. We
Yeah.
just kind of happen to connect, and music brought us together. And you're a very interesting person, and I'm grateful that
Thanks.
you know
Yeah.
so it's it's a wild ride, but I think also vinyl's making a comeback, and I think everything goes in cycles. I think people's attention spans are starting to get fried, and people are starting to get fried with the technology and being on our phones all the time. And the sound of the sky, this album that I've made, is kind of a call to return to the natural world and to nature itself. And this is my expression of saying, and my message of unity and peace and love, just to try to give something to someone that might kind of rejuvenate somebody in some way.
Now, in terms of course, like you mentioned, it's a lot easier to put yourself out there. Has it also been easier then to kind of like continue your vision with your music because there's less interference from like labels like in the past? Like there was a lot of, I guess, influence from corporate America to try to put out a certain record. You don't really feel that then when you're making your music, right?
No, and I think if an artist wants to truly go that route, I think if they try to put themselves in front of certain people enough, that I'm sure you can make that happen. But for me, the music the music comes first, and but of course it's a business, so when you have to make decisions about, you have to balance the two. It's like there are decisions that have to be made. And if I was also to give anyone advice about it, I would say, obviously, like you just said, the pro is that it's easier now. But what I think the challenge is now is that we're presented with so many options when you're creating an album or listening to music. But when you're creating an album, there's so many decisions that have to be made, and there's so many routes you can go. So I think it's really important to be very definitive and just try to. I'm trying to implement this myself, but just try to make a decision that is the best decision you can make, rather than trying to sound like someone else, or try to make something sound uh, like a particular band. Just try to get the best sound out of yourself and what you have first, and then transmit that. Um,
So you're saying like kind of find yourself before kind of going in for making music.
yeah, yeah, and you can find yourself along the way, but don't get caught up in oh, this doesn't sound like XYZ. Well, it's like that might be okay that it doesn't sound like XYZ because that might be just, you know, your sound rather than trying to sound like another band or, you know, just let yourself sound like what you're going to sound like at first and then that can develop.
Well, Will, I want to thank you for coming on the show today. I don't know if you have anything else before we wrap it up.
Um, yeah, are you doing any do you have any where can we hear more about what you're doing too, like in the Bay Area or in LA?
Yeah, well, of course, everybody can follow me at the Mike Nelson Show on Instagram, and that's kind of where I post all the links for all the shows. I do a show for LA radio, and then of course I do also shows up here in the Bay Area for Radio Bilingüe that's aired all across the country. So basically, you can go on social media, and that's where you can find all my happenings for all my different shows. What about you, Will? Where can people follow you?
So if you want to follow me online, you can follow me at Will Patrick Official, and my website is willpatrickmusic.com. If you'd like to see where I'm playing, we have a tour schedule on that website.
Well, I want to thank you, Will. Appreciate it. Thanks everybody for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. And thanks for watching.
Oh, thanks so much, Mike. It's a pleasure.